4 AWPs for now. Apex, not in this lifetime.
Wow. Get out of here.
Oh my god! Inhuman reactions!
Rockton Freiburg comes in, he sprays, Freiburg misses, and it's the ace! He puts it up single-handedly!
He's gonna fall down again. What is this shot from Simple? Are you serious? What is that? You can't do that, Simple. That's not allowed. This is not FPL. This is a major.
The Cathedral of Counter-Strike.
The Cathedral of Counter-Strike.
The author of Magic Moments.
Welcome to the Cathedral of Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike's long, intricate history has walked us through a whole slew of different countries and different cities within those different countries, but more often than not, we're taken back to a familiar city in a familiar country. So when you think of Counter-Strike, what city comes to mind? Some of the game's greatest tournaments were held in places like Katowice, Copenhagen, Jönköping, Odense, Malmo, Stockholm, Dallas, Rio, Sydney, Oakland? I guess. All of these cities have had several significant events held at them, and history flows through them like water should be flowing through you right now. Stay hydrated. However, some of you are probably aware that I left out a very important city, which was intentional, because now we have the real answer for which city comes to mind. Out of all of these CS historical places, there are only a few cities lucky enough to receive the Counter-Strike chokehold of annual contractual obligation. Copenhagen is one of those cities because of Denmark's cultural significance within the scene and obsession with the game. Katowice is another city because ESL is scared of what might happen if they upset Papito.
Don't with Papa.
And finally, Cologne is chosen because, well, to put it simply, there's just something special about this place. Champions of Cologne define an era. Nearly every team to have lifted a trophy in Cologne has cemented their legacy as one of the best teams in history. Cologne is one of the only places that every single great team wants to knock off their bucket list. Winning here means so much more than just another tournament to claim or trophy to lift. Cologne has been so impactful and so significant to the scene that it is often referred to as the Cathedral of Counter-Strike, and people actually call it that, and not just for marketing reasons. Cologne, in fact, held the first ever S-tier tournament, at least according to Wikipedia's qualifications for an S-tier tournament, but I trust this website with my life. Throughout Counter-Strike's life, Cologne has been the home of 23 different top-tier tournaments, more than any other city by a mile, except Jönköping with 22, but they actually haven't seen a tier 1 tournament there since 2020, which is kind of weird now that I think about it. That's besides the point. Cologne has seen titans clash, blood shed, hearts break, upsets and triumphs and dominance, and moments that fans of Counter-Strike will remember for the rest of their lives. And it all happened right here in the humble city of Cologne, Germany. But why is Cologne so special? And what history does Cologne have with Counter-Strike? How do my taxes keep getting worse every single year, but everything keeps getting more and more expensive? In this video, I'm going to go over the history of Counter-Strike events in Cologne, and along the way, we'll figure out what makes it so different and why Cologne is so significant to Counter-Strike fans. By the way, huge thank you to Intel for sponsoring and making this video possible, but more on them later. So before we can talk about what's going on here at the Lanxess, we need to go back to the year 2000, when Counter-Strike was a wee baby at 2 years old. I honestly forget that this game is older than me sometimes. In the early aughts, Counter-Strike looked nothing like it does today, believe it or not. So on December 8th, 2000, teams from all across Europe, but mostly Germany, made their way to a place called Centre Rheinhofen to compete in CPL Europe Cologne. With 32 fully national teams, a trend that will basically remain for the next 15 years, teams had a chance to compete for 10,000 euros, which was enough to buy a house back then, but not even enough to pay off a fraction of your debt now. Surprisingly, for 2000, there were a lot of sponsors you might recognize, like Logitech, Razer, and of course, Flying Horse. The reason it's considered an S-tier event, even though it is only composed of Europeans, is because as much as America sucks today, they weren't great then either, and European Counter-Strike was supreme, a tradition that still stands 25 years later. By the way, finding footage for events this old is extremely painful, so I hope the footage of me playing 1.6 is sufficient enough for you. I have a newfound respect for people who are playing this back then, because look at me fucking spray at this guy. I have no idea how spraying works in this game. Teams at this event had to deal with a, let's say a flaccid tournament structure. Since these were the early days of CS, it is understandable that nobody knew what the hell was going on, so a lot of score lines looked like this. You may be wondering how it's even possible for a team to lose 7-0 or 20-0 or 1-2 in a game of Counter-Strike, so let me just read you the rules. Match. One map played with each team playing a half match as CT and the other half as Ts. Half. 1 20-minute map session. 2 halves equal a match. Round. 1 4-minute cycle on a map. It is counted as chargeries only, so only T wins are counted at D maps and CT wins at CS maps. The clan won more rounds has won the game. End quote. Yeah, even with me explaining it, it doesn't make any sense at all. Chargerers, I'm assuming, means the side that is attacking, which is why only CTs get wins on hostage maps and Ts get wins on defuse maps. So basically, teams can only win rounds during one half of the game, resulting in what I'm guessing is games where you grab a lead on T side and then just stall out the game for 4 minutes every single round until the map is over. This is like what happened in the NBA before the shot clock was invented, so you could just hold the ball forever until you win, resulting in games like the Pistons winning 19-18. So despite what I would imagine was a masterful performance from Origi of Team Good Game, they lost 3-6 to get knocked down to the lower bracket, where they eventually lost 11-1, a heartbreaking defeat for superstar Origi and the gang. Imagine losing a pistol round and just having to come to terms with the fact that you've just basically lost the game. There are recognizable teams here like SK Gaming and MTW, as well as Eyeballers, who are now owned by JW and Flusha, but I don't personally recognize any of the players here besides Potty, so I'll just leave them up on the screen in case you do, and you can let me know in the comments which ones stand out to you. I know some of them stand out to me. The finals consisted of Finnish team Clan Z and Danish team Spirits of Amiga, so unfortunately no German team in the finals just yet, and the Finns take home the trophy with a score of 14-10. This is the only footage I can find of the winning moment in this event, and the quality is so bad that I seriously cannot even tell if this is Counter-Strike or the Quake tournament that was being held in the same venue, so for the sake of the video, we're going to pretend that it's Counter-Strike and congratulate Clan Z. By CPL Cologne 2002, however, Counter-Strike had evolved a bit more, and they realized that the first to X rounds was a better idea than just giving both teams 20 minutes to do absolutely nothing. It was still a bit chungus though, as all the matches were best of 1 in MR12, including the grand final. Double elimination made it a bit less crazy, but the fact that an entire €20,000 prize pool was decided by a bunch of best of 1s is kind of insane. At least they got rid of the hostage maps in the pool and they landed on defuse only. Our good friend Origi makes a return this tournament too, but unfortunately he dropped out in the 4th place. Names back then were extremely funny. It's either something like Bitch or just a generic first name like Jerry, or the entire founding Mousesports roster minus Silencer. I'd like to imagine that his first name last name is actually just Silencer. But a team I'd like to point out here, Nordic Division, had guys like Veslin, Dark, and Executor who all had very impressive careers in the days of pre-1.6 Counter-Strike but are rarely talked about today. Dark was an established Quake 2 player who jumped ship to Counter-Strike and immediately found impact, being called the best player in the world by his team leader Veslin, who is regarded as one of the best IGLs in the world at the time. Executor, on the other hand, was standing in but was still described as a one-man army by his teammate Swift. Yes, all these quotes are teammates gassing themselves up, but the point I'm trying to make here is that these guys were really good, and their ruthlessness showed in the group stage when they only dropped 5 rounds in 3 matches and stomped their way through the playoffs, only giving up 14 rounds on their way to the finals versus Against All Authority. This finals matchup against AAA would be the hardest game that they'd have in the entire tournament, with a whopping 8 rounds lost, meaning they won with room to spare. From 2003 to 2006, though, large Cologne-based events had taken a break. Unfortunate for the narrative, but great for my researchers and I's sanity. I will, however, try to do you some justice by talking about some influential happenings that went on during these years. Source released in 2004, which had a couple of smaller tournaments being held in Cologne called EPS Germany, but Liquipedia doesn't honor them as S tier simply because the competition wasn't good enough, even though the prize pools were pretty nice. Either way, I thought it was worth bringing up because this event was held in Cologne quite often. It's just that it was a local LAN with mostly German participants, as shown here by the fact that Mousesports has basically won every single year in 1.6. During these years, though, in 2004 Deutschland, a small company called ESL, which stands for Electronic Sports League, would begin picking up some steam. This company, headquartered in Cologne, had a gaming magazine, plus ran some smaller tournaments, and within the same year, they were starting to become one of the more reputable TOs in the scene, alongside your CPLs, WCGs, and ESWCs. Some part of me has a feeling that this company will be massively important later on in the video, but for now, we'll have to jump forward to 2007 and continue on with our Cologne exhibition. By 2007, this whole newfangled esports thing started to gain enough traction that groups of people with a lot of money started to take notice. The game was going strong for 8 years at this point and would be in 3rd grade by now, and that sort of stability is something that Intel, the biggest computer chip company in the world, took notice of. They wanted to corner this market. They had a presence for a while in the scene, but it was way cooler if you could be a headline sponsor and have a bunch of tournaments all with your name plastered all over it. They shopped around for options and came across one ESL, who was probably the 3rd or 2nd biggest organizer in Counter-Strike by this point. They decided to create a whole new tournament series, the Intel Extreme Masters, or IEM for short. Intel Extreme Masters would be premier level tournaments with a big old prize pot of $205,000, top tier production, and grandeur that was incredible for the time. Playing on a stage in a venue that isn't a hotel event hall? Unheard of. And it all started in a German city that we've become so familiar with, Hanover? I know it's rude of me to bait you with an event just for it to not be Cologne related, but you gotta understand that IEM is just as important to Cologne as Cologne is to IEM at this point. They go hand in hand. And Hanover is close enough if your definition of close enough includes the 300 kilometers in between. It's okay, Cologne. Sometimes you're the sweetest peach on the tree, but some people just don't like peaches. No, but really, it took a while for CS to come back to Cologne. If the Lanxess Arena was the cathedral of Counter-Strike, then it was still being built. Well, technically, it was built in 1998, but it was known as the Cologne Arena, which literally just means Cologne Arena. Very creative. It only became the Lanxess in 2008 when a specialty chemicals company company bought the naming rights. They actually extended their contract in 2023, so until 2028, it will remain the Specialty Chemicals Arena, known for its Counter-Strike and toxicity, of course. I bet this tournament went so hard back in the day, but I cannot find any footage of this event, and I'm extremely bummed about it. All I could find is this HLTV article on the grand finals with an extremely funny link that just brings you back to the same article that you're already reading. Straight heat, HLTV. CS finally returns to Cologne in 2008. It wasn't IEM or ESL though, it was WCG, one of the other large tournament organizers at the time. It took place in an event hall at a small venue, no fancy arena or stage. Wait, no, actually there was a stage in this tiny ass venue. Wow, good job guys. In this tournament we are blessed because we finally have authentic footage of the finals, but no other playoff game or group stage, but I'll take it at this point. Also, what is this fucking logo from Mammoth.si? Like, actually, it doesn't even fit the frame. How is that possible? The finals match was between Zonix MTW and Robin's SK Gaming, with the first two maps of this Danish versus Swedish feud being extremely close. MTW are your Cologne 2008 champions, and as they take their photos and raise their flag, everyone was already leaving to go watch the Guitar Hero Championship that WCG was also hosting next door. For the next couple of years, though, IEM would shop around cities, LA, Montreal, Dubai, Seoul, Hanover for the third time in a row. Come on, guys, you're so close to Cologne. It's just 3 hours away. Oh, wait, they actually did host a small tournament in Cologne for $10,000, featuring the 4 best teams in the world. Fnatic also finally had Get Right. Despite Fnatic being slight favorites, Karn was quoted saying, "Mouse Sports can beat us on any given Sunday." And on that given Sunday of August 23rd, 2009, this event would be claimed by Mouse Sports on home soil, which makes it even more satisfying for familiar names like GobB and Six. GobB putting up some numbers that look about the same as they did 8 years later, while Six and Tixo absolutely farmed to secure the dub. Surely an upset like this won't happen again, right? Unless... IEM has finally found their way home after a successful event last year. They decided they liked Cologne so much that they'd feature the championship finals here. Even though the main event is still being held in Hanover, you can be the sweetest peach on the tree. They'll learn to love you eventually, I swear. Once again, this is a European-only tournament. Europeans dominated the scene, which still hasn't changed at all today, so it's an S-tier tournament representative of the best teams in the game, still. Thorin also casted this event, and the finals are once again the only piece of footage remaining, because God forbid anyone archive any game besides the finals. I guess it's realistically the only game that matters, but still. Save all your clips. You never know when you're gonna move on from a game and you wish you still had these memories. Anyway, Fnatic with Forest and Get Right, and again with Neo, Pasha, and Taz were both the overwhelming favorites to win this event. There were a couple people believing in Mouse Sports because they are the hometown heroes after all, but they were definitely not the favorites. Especially not when you can win a mouse pad if you guess correctly. Holy shit. Why would I vote based on vibes when there are such high stakes involved? Anyway, Mouse Sports would take this event after a bunch of hard-fought close calls, such as double overtime against Kirchnet, and also, what is this, triple or quadruple overtime against SK before the finals. They won map 1 Nuke pretty convincingly, which honestly just kind of happens with Nuke. The map was unbelievably one-sided back in the day and still kind of is, but just not nearly as bad. Then map 2 Inferno went to 29 rounds. It looked all but finished for Mouse after Fnatic took 15. The Sweets just looked too good. Watch this Forest peak. What do you do against this?
These men coming through, he does get the kill onto one of them. Forest.
You know what would have helped in this situation? A faster computer. It's too bad they didn't have one of these bad boys back then, the Acer Predator Orion 7000, the official tournament PC of IEM Cologne. Intel flew me out to IEM Cologne 2025, which you'll see later in the video, and while there I got the chance to play on the Predator Orion 7000, which is actually what all the pros use on the stage. It really provides next level gaming performance and ultra smooth gameplay, even for CS2 on all high settings, which is honestly an achievement in its own right. With this computer I was owning dudes in Germany so hard that they were trying to kick me from the server. Average day for a guy like me. With up to 24 cores inside the Intel Core Ultra 9 285K, you can stream, watch YouTube videos like this one in the background on your second monitor, and game all at the same time with no lag at all. Packed with an RTX 5090 and up to 128 gigs of DDR5 RAM, this beast is built to handle anything you throw at it. It could handle Cyberpunk absolutely flawlessly. It would smash the Crysis 3 test if anyone still uses that game as a benchmark. Add in lightning fast Wi-Fi 7 and up to 6 terabytes of PCIe SSD storage, and you've got enough space for literally anything. So if you want to play on the same beastly machines as your favorite professional players, or if you just want unshakable performance and the ability to finally play CS2 the way it was meant to be played, make the upgrade to the Acer Predator Orion 7000. If the pros can play on it, then you can too. Thank you to Intel for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into things. Where was I? Oh, right. But Mounds clawed back into the game, clutch after clutch, FAMAS kill after FAMAS kill, team kill to deny the ace, but eventually trip and fall at 13, and we move on to map 3 Tuscan once again. And just when things started getting tight, Mouse locks in and pulls away with 3 in a row to finally close out the map in the series and take home another trophy in Cologne. Home field advantage is too strong in Cologne, it seems. Must be something in the soil? God, I love Cologne so much. Also, if my analysis sucks, that's because it does, so let me know if you wouldn't want me covering a game on broadcast or if these sections are boring to you. By the end of 2010, 1.6 was reaching the tail end of its lifespan, fan and didn't even know it yet. Valve was about to take it out back and watch the sunset, and then I've been advised to not make this joke any further. 2011 marked the true ending of Counter-Strike 1.6's competitive scene as we knew it. The game was over a decade old at this point. That 8-year-old game that we knew before was now nearly in middle school and about to learn algebra. It was experiencing how truly painful life could be. Events were still going on for it, of course, but at a much lower frequency than it was in its heyday. People were trying out other games like Source or moving on with their life for a more stable career, or, late into 2011, waiting for a new Counter-Strike. It was called Global Offensive and it looked pretty bad, but hey, it was a new Counter-Strike. You can either switch or get left behind. At least you were given a choice back then. I'm looking at you, Valve. Intel Extreme Masters were still run as a part of the remaining circuit, but none of them were happening in Cologne. ESL were still pumping out tournaments though. In spring, summer, and fall of 2013, they were running both online and offline cups for a solid amount of money. It was pretty cool to have that reliability in the scene, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't that big Cologne tournament that we hear about today. There was no cathedral. It was just a small church branch in like rural Kentucky or something.
The Lanxess Arena. Finally.
But then 2014 came around, and this may be a hot take, but if I had to choose a single year that changed the Counter-Strike scene the most, it would probably be this one. Objectively, the game grew the most in 2015, but I think that was built off of what was born in 2014. Plus, that's inconvenient to my narrative, so I'm just going to ignore it. There was official support from Valve to create these cool, big events called Majors, which would immortalize players' names in the game forever. And wouldn't you know it, Cologne was chosen to host one of the 2 Majors this year. Ninjas in Pajamas was a perfect example of this blend between old and new. NIP were an old org going all the way back to the early days of 1.6, but they were back for CSGO and absolutely fucking fried in the early days. Having a dominant team right off the bat was maybe another reason why Global Offensive got off to such a good start despite its troubles. But by mid-2014, they were no longer even close to as dominant. On the road to the ESL Cologne 2014 Major, they had lost a bit of their former glory. There were arguments that despite faltering the past month or so, they were still the favorites to win the whole thing, but that's the thing. They were favorites for 2 Majors in a row, and they lost both in the finals. The results leading up to the Major were shaky: 5th to 6th, 5th to 8th, a loss in the finals against a team they were slated to beat. They were still a good team, but at some point you gotta prove that you can win a major, and this NIP team did not seem to have the sauce that they used to. Teams like fellow Swedes Fnatic were showing them up, as were reigning major champions Virtus.pro, so was Na'Vi. Shit, you could even argue that LDLC or Titan had their number as well. Titan had that Kenny S guy, he was pretty good. NIP got off to a good start by beating the Indian Team Wolf, only to immediately lose their next game to Epsilon Esports. Looking back at it, this match was chungus as hell. It took place on the shittiest version of Cobblestone, and the Epsilon roster was composed of legendary players Shox and Kiyoshima alongside 2 match fixers and a cheater. Fifth Laren also got knifed because it seems his team forgot to clear the famous angle of random ladder and room above mid that looks eerily similar to where Lee Harvey Oswald got his famous 1K from. We've all been there before. NIP rebounded by beating Hellraisers, moving on to the quarters where they took on C9. This quarterfinal is iconic because not only did Hiko hit that famous Inhuman reaction clip, but it was also a 6 series. Watching this series, knowing that NA is historically mediocre and yet they almost beat the legendary NIP did something to younger me, man. NIP barely eked it out 2-1 and moved on to fight LDLC in the semis. LDLC was hot off beating Virtus.pro, where Kelly hit the famous jumping one-shot on Dust 2 that everyone goes for nowadays. This tournament had a lot of iconic clips, huh? This series was similarly close, going to 3 games, and Apex did his absolute best dragging his team through the mud and was still doing the crowd work that he does today. This has been doing this since 2014 and it still goes hard as NIP came out on top and moved on to the finals to fight their fellow Swedes in Fnatic. These guys were absolutely terrifying, and you could honestly make an entire video on the sheer terror that Fnatic would wreak upon their opponents over the course of 2014 and 2015, but at this point, they were still an unknown quantity. They were a ripening peach on the tree, if you would, and NIP did not like peaches. The grand finals of this game, while it may not be the greatest series of all time, or even the best match these two have ever played against each other, still goes down as one of the best ever played at a Cologne event and one of my favorites ever. NIP had now lost 2 majors straight. Maybe we're no longer even the best in the world after over a year of dominance. A 1v3 from Get Right at the most pivotal time on map 3, an ace from Freiburg, and a 1v2 featuring a 180 pivot from the greatest entry fraggers in the early days of CSGO. This series felt like we got everything from a team that wanted it harder than anyone else there, and they finally did it. NIP were major champions at last. Maybe the setting they needed was the Lanxess. One of the best photos in CS history was born from this, and I think literally all of the players would consider it the biggest moment of their careers, although I think Forrest has said it's a tie between this and the first big LAN he won with B-Grip, but you don't need to know that. I think there's a fair argument for this being where it all began, when Cologne at Lanxess took the first step it needed to become the legendary cathedral of Counter-Strike TM that it's known as today.
Guys, please respect for the finalists. Second finalists, please respect them. Amazing words from Taz, amazing words. That's what makes this sport great.
ESL knew what they were cooking after the poetic storyline of Cologne 2014, so they brought the major right back to the same place around the same time next year. Like every major, there were a lot of cool things going on and stories behind each competitor. One of the more interesting ones was Team Kingwin. They had some pretty cool players like Scream and an up-and-coming Norwegian player named Rain, as well as the former NIP player Michael Lele, who was picked up and then dropped within the span of a year and would later become a moon landing truther and now a gambling streamer, which is kind of depressing. Anyway, maybe the weirdest part of them is basically they were all from a different country. In Counter-Strike, at this point, there were basically 0 mixed nationality teams. There were a few here and there, but they were almost never very good. But Kingwin, they were pretty good. At the least, they had some good players, and even though they weren't a team that most would define as winning, they still usually went deep in tournaments they attended. Kingwin would be the first prominent team to do this sort of project, moving the meta towards mixed nationality teams where they would all default to speaking English. Some other teams worth mentioning are Virtus Pro, who were one of those perennial top teams that didn't budge their roster like every other team was doing around this time. They had a slower year, but some first place finishes and made it to the quarters at Katowice 2015. The highlight of VP's year, however, came just a month prior when they faced off against Kingwin in the Face It League 2015 finals, and Pasha said this before the game.
New Kingwin, my friend? What we talking about, my friend? What we talking about? My friend, New Kingwin team, my friend, they have no chance to be honest. No chance. My friend, to be honest, no chance, no chance.
You gotta wonder if it's gonna be the last time ever, but what an impressive fight here. It gives you a bit of hope that this international team concept might actually work out, because let's be honest, if it's possible to create teams like this in Counter-Strike, we've got like a very different future ahead of us. Suddenly there are a lot of other options that we've maybe never even thought about.
Then there is Team Solomid, who was probably the 3rd best team across all of 2015 and absolutely earned that fitting title from always finishing 3rd or 4th at every big tournament they attended. Sometimes they would win an event or make it to the finals, but under the brightest spotlight, the core of Dupree, Exipnix, and Device would always give you a semi, who was destined to be so. Number 1 and number 2 would always beat their ass. Number 2 was the French team Team Envious, and their lineup was pretty great, but I think if you're gonna soy jack point at one player, it's gotta be that Kenny S guy, or maybe even Happy. He got that one Deagle ace against guess who? Team Solomid. Sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. Wait, wrong video, sorry. But the best team in the world, not just at the time of Cologne 2015, but basically across the entirety of the year, was Fnatic. I don't think that reveal is necessarily shocking since I basically said as much when we covered 2014, but I still think it's underestimated how much of a fear of God these 5 players instilled in their opponents. People hated this team, and they were absolutely rolling everyone. They were the best team in the world, and it wasn't even close. People often forget how good of a player Olafmeister was at the time and discredit him because he was one of the lowest number 1 rated players of all time, but this guy could literally do it all before anyone else could. He could op, he could rifle, he could clutch, his pistols were incredible. These are all traits that most good players have now, but he was the first Swiss Army knife of CSGO. NIP, the team that took them down in 2014, were now a total shell of their former selves. They had a rotating 5th player problem that they honestly never really solved. Fnatic absolutely cleaned up this Cologne major as a result. My theory is that NIP were an apex predator in the Swedish scene that was keeping the entire world in check, and once they cut 5th Laren, Fnatic was able to overtake them and alter the CS timeline forever. I call it 5th Laren trutherism, and you should write a comment if you want to join my movement. 3 years, 3 majors in a row. This is what's known as a trend. I'm very good at pattern recognition. Like in previous events, this Cologne was also the 2nd major of the calendar year. In 2014 and 2015, it was Katowice which played host to the first major of the year. In 2016, though, it was in fucking Columbus, Ohio. And at that Columbus major, Luminosity Gaming were going to work shocking the world. They were a team that had grown exponentially over the past year. They were present at last year's Cologne and finished out in the quarterfinals, losing to Fnatic, which is understandable because, again, they kind of just pooped on everyone. But they were a different beast now. They were no longer beaten by the world. They were the world beaters. Oh, and they were also bought out by SK Gaming, so that was their name for a little bit. But who else was on the field? Who could possibly pose a challenge to the clear favorite? There were a couple of mixed nationality teams that could definitely make a dent in this tournament. Kingwin were signed by Gamers2 and then acquired by FaZe, and were just a hodgepodge of different players. Kiyoshima was on the roster, and I think that speaks for itself. They did not win. No offense, Kyo, you're a legend. Despite the gambling streams, of course. Optic also had a mostly NA team, but also had a Spanish star, Mixwell. They weren't going to make a dent in this event, though. I just kind of wanted to bring them up because I miss this team. Mouse Sports were super promising. They had moved away from being a full German team and now had Serbian superstar Nico and Dutch Christian. However, unfortunately, this is before Christian received his federal contract that gave him a government-mandated insane play once per year, so that X factor wasn't quite there yet. So no, even though mixed nationality teams were becoming way more common after Kingwin led the way, none of them could fell the Brazilians of SK Gaming. The field was looking kind of rough for the quarterfinals onwards, though. A really funny team to sneak their way in was Flipside Tactics. Flipside is one of those teams which is around since pretty much the beginning beginning of CS and has always scraped their way into a major and basically never did anything else. And the entire roster itself was just so incredibly mediocre. Even the former best player in the world, Markelov, was just passable on this team. Shara, I specifically remember as a player because he would play with Windows mouse acceleration on. You know, the setting that you were trained to turn off the moment you felt it enabled on a new computer. But performance be damned, they made it all the way to top 8 by knocking Nip out of the tournament, who had yet another new 5th in Pith. Then Flipside had to face off against SK Gaming and almost won a map? I forgot Flipside had World Edit, who named himself after a Minecraft mod. That's so fire. Okay, so who was ahead of SK? There was Virtus Pro in the semifinals, who gave SK a really good run for their money and were still rocking their old classic lineup. God bless you, VP. This was genuinely the match of the tournament, despite Nuke kind of being a wash. And not to spoil anything, but this would be the closest best of 3 in the entire tournament for SK Gaming, because in the finals, they had to play Team Liquid. Team Liquid was another really interesting team to watch this tournament, completely ignoring the fact that they had Simple carrying the ever-living shit out of this team. It was all American, baby. Also, just so we're all aware, Cologne 2016 was the event where Simple did this.
Double smokes in the same place there. Simple just jumping casually into the side. He's going to fall down again. What is this clutch from Simple? Are you serious? What is that? You can't do that, Simple. That's not allowed. This is not FPL. This is a major.
Team Liquid also got paved over by SK in the finals, but making it all the way there was a really big step for NACS. At least JDM got an ace against them, but it was giving Chris Paul his massive 3 to cut the lead to 42. In 2017, one of the most devastating things in Counter-Strike history happened. Cologne was no longer a major. I know, this is so sad that I had to wipe the tears away for an hour after writing this part of the script, but luckily it was still a big-ass event. Cologne has sufficiently gained enough aura to become one of the biggest events of Counter-Strike. It was a notch on the belt that every pro player wanted, a bucket list item, a plump, ripe peach on the tall green tree or whatever. As always, a lot of strong teams were in attendance that you could all argue could make a deep run or maybe even win the whole damn thing. Mousesports had a full mixed nationality team and a kid named Rops, who was in his rookie year as a pro after smurfing in FPL and terrorizing players like 3-time major winner and Cologne champion JW.
One small pit.
Oh, f this Rops.
Virtus Pro were still rocking the same roster, and honestly, I can't blame them. They would still randomly show up and look like the best team in the world for one tournament before going back to playing golf or whatever old people do in their spare time. Hug and, like, kiss their wife or something, I don't know. G2 were on the upswing and could win on any given Sunday, and this was the one small period of time where North was actually a relevant team. The biggest threat of them all, though, was the big bad SK Gaming. This org itself had been starved of a Cologne win for so long, and after winning in 2016, that thirst has not been quenched. They wanted more. However, doing it twice in a row is sort of wild when there's a big target on your back. SK were definitely the best team in the world, one of the greatest ever, and they were never not favorites, but there were times where you might have doubted they could have gone the whole way. They lost their opening game to the Turkish Space Soldiers, then to G2 later on, but ended up clinching the rest of their matches, limped through Optic Terek in the quarterfinals, and then shit-stomped the rest of the way through World number 2 and number 6 like everyone expected to win the whole thing. Cloud9 with Shroud was in the finals. That's so epic. Do people still call him the king of Reddit? Is that a thing people still remember? Is that a thing people remember happening? This Cologne feels very much like a relic of its time. There were so many fun memories I associate with it. There were 2 good NA teams. Tai Lu was here. FaZe was a world beater with Kiyoshima. It's so beautiful. But ultimately, it all boiled down to being yet another page in SK's stacked history and resume. But it felt special that you could point to basically any team at this event and have something to get excited about. In 2018, Cologne was once again not a major, but I'd say it was pretty thoroughly a staple of the scene at this point because of that aura thing I mentioned before, plus the fact that they have been running this thing for years in some form or another by this point. I think it's gotten to the point that there would be riots in the streets if the Lanxess Arena got abandoned for a year. But the year was 2018, and so that means it was the Astralis year. The era that everyone remembers but wishes to forget. This was the golden roster. The one that won basically every single event that they entered. But they didn't win Cologne this year. There really must be something in the soil for Astralis to have fumbled here. But if Astralis didn't win, then who did? Was it Cloud9, who had Stiko on their otherwise all-American roster? Something that I think the whole world collectively forgot and imbues a sense of panic when one gazes upon this roster? No, it wasn't them. But I do have anxiety now. Was it FaZe, the second best team in the world? No, not them either. This was when they had Croman on their roster. No shade to him, that's a peak I would kill to have, but what the f happened to him? Was it Made in Brazil, who added famous Brazilian player Stewie 2K to their roster? No, not them. This wasn't even the weirdest roster change that they've made. No, it wasn't any of these guys. Navi were the world number 3 and had the best player in the world, Simple, on their team, so it's not really a surprise that they'd smash through this one. What was a surprise, though, is that the team that got second is Big. Big, the 25th best team in the world, the one that had Smuya. Big absolutely popped off at this event after a rich history of mediocrity. They had just made it out of MDL and graduated to ESL Pro League, congratulations, but how the hell did that translate into a second place finish? Well, it was probably something in the soil. Next and Tabson having an insane event, but wait, who is that IGLing Big? Holy f***. it's gotta be. It had been 8 years since he won last in Cologne, and he had almost done it again. The longevity of this guy's career is honestly incredibly inspiring, and even though it didn't translate into any success, it made for an incredible moment that this team with gotta be outplaced the Dynasty Astralis. By 2019, ESL had really started to establish the Lanxess as the cathedral of Counter-Strike. They were putting that name up all over the place, and if there's anything that competitive CS fans like, it's nicknames. Whoever the marketing person was who came up with this one truly earned their bonus for that year. Probably the one thing that everyone had their eyes on was if Astralis could make the magical run this time. Them not winning Cologne last year was a crazy result, since they basically shit on everyone at every other tournament in 2018, minus an incident with MSL that we still have not recovered from since. In their last 3 tournaments, they were stuck in 5th to 6th place jail and even lost the title of #1 in the world. A title that Team Liquid now held, which is surreal to think about given whatever the hell they're doing nowadays. Oh, North American CS, how I miss you. Anyway, basically everyone was still expecting Astralis to win, and how could you not? It was Astralis. A team this good, a team that many say solved Counter-Strike TM, had to fill the Cologne trophy-sized hole in their cabinet. There were some other big teams to keep an eye out for as well. CS was starting to get pretty international, and players were showing up on teams that you'd never expect. Since last year, the usually French Vitality brought Alex, a British in-game leader who was doing pretty good in Tier 2. If this roster change happened any time before the 1900s, it would have been a big problem. Xantrez was finally branching away from national Turkish teams and was now on big. FaZe was still a random assortment of strong players over the years, all being coached by a desk analyst. NIP was now in their Plopsky era, and the geriatric Forest and Get Right were still trying to roll back the years.
I remember when we fucking ran this show, Patrick Lindbergh.
The 2 first teams to make it to the playoffs were Team Liquid and NRG, a sentence that you will never hear again. Navi with a new guy named Boomich were close behind. Zeus was somehow still on this team, and Edward was the one who was dropped, but don't worry, that'll be fixed soon. Nip, Vitality, and Astralis also all, of course, made it through. FaZe didn't, though, since they lost out to the other Fever Dream team of Mouse Sports. 10 different nationalities were represented in that game. Truly a global offensive. TM. In the playoffs, Team Liquid started off great, taking down Navi. They weren't going to have to take on Astralis until probably the grand finals, but wait. It was Vitality? Astralis lost another Cologne? This roster, the greatest of all time, the one that solves Counter-Strike TM, never actually won in the Lanxess? They're done. They're truly done. I knew their whole run was a fluke. They will never win again. Yeah, never mind. They won the next major. Anyway, I digress. Team Liquid were up against Team Vitality in the finals, and this was a huge game for them. Not only because it was a Cologne, but also because a win here would give them the Intel Grand Slam. The Intel Grand Slam was a bonus $1 million cash reward and fucking gold bars for the team that won 4 out of 10 ESL tournaments. An accomplishment which is so difficult that it had only been done by one other team before. Can you guess which one? But I won't keep you in suspense any longer. Team Liquid would win in the finals and be the second team to get the Intel Grand Slam and be the first team ever to win both the Intel Grand Slam and Cologne. Take that, Astralis. This moment to date is still the absolute peak of North American Counter-Strike. It was never this beautiful before, and it will probably never be this good again. Unfortunately, the only thing that is stronger than peak competitive Counter-Strike in the heart of Cologne, Germany, is an international pandemic possibly caused by Rudy Gobert that irreparably destroyed society as well as my brain. I got COVID twice and sat through the entirety of Naruto, and I don't remember a single thing from that show. Anyway, there were a lot of events in Counter-Strike this year, but an in-person Cologne event was not one of them. So by 2021, everyone was itching for CS to be back in the Lanxess. Unfortunately, again, they would have to wait a bit longer. COVID was still ruining shit, and although LANs were back in some capacity, they were still by and large crowdless. So for the newly rebranded IEM Cologne, it took place in the Hyatt Hotel. This was all well and good, and it's best that everyone was in a safer setting, but it was also kind of hilarious that they were playing Counter-Strike for $1 million in a random hotel. We were truly back to the ESEA LAN days. The more things change, the more they remain the same. In the couple of years since the last Cologne, everything had changed. Teams which dominated before were now shells of their former selves, and players who you had never heard of before were now the best in the world. Who the f*** is Shiro or Exile? If you asked someone that question at Cologne 2019, they probably had no idea unless they were an extreme ball knower. But now in 2021, they probably did know because they were beating everyone up. This is a tangent, but this goes beyond Cologne 2021. This is a current day thing. I swear to God, every day there's a new player on a random mixed team named Gortbrick or something who you have no idea exists until he goes to an S tier LAN and drops 2.09 rating while making veterans look like they just installed Counter-Strike for Father's Day. Anyway, I digress. The point is, to the casual viewer, that sort of thing is exactly what happened over COVID. It felt like no team was the same. The Team Liquid roster that was technically the reigning Cologne champions was totally different, adding Grim and the legendary Fallen. Vitality was back to being fully French. FaZe now had twists, and even the oh-so-beautiful Astralis dynasty had crumbled, adding a promising up-and-comer named Bubsky that I cannot wait to see have a long and prosperous career. The team that probably had the biggest target on their back was Gambit, the team that had Shiro and Exile. They were a team with obviously newer faces, minus the major winner Hobbit, who had dominated online and were #1 in the world and were now looking to prove it on LAN. But they weren't able to make the run, finishing 5th to 6th and causing them to become branded as onliners, a label which places a curse upon you. With Gambit gone, the revamped Vamp and Navi were now shoo-ins to clean house, and they did. The rookie Bit in particular was a f***ing demon, posting a 1.22 rating across the entire event, and that number was the 3rd highest on the team. It's hard nowadays to remember that Electronic used to be one of the best players in the world, but holy shit, he proved it here with a 1.23 rating, barely eking out Bit. And then there was Simple, who put up a 1.51 rating, one of the highest event ratings of all time. By the statistics alone, it was a total stomp for Navi.
They got Luka Don, A-Reeves, and then LeBron, the real big three.
Is this even a joke that Counter-Strike fans would know?
The Lanxess Arena. Finally,
CS came back to the Lanxess in 2022. Last year may have taken place in the temple of Counter-Strike, but now we were in the full cathedral.
What the f*** is Mickey Mouse doing here, bro? What?
Once again, there were some rosters that would truly be unexplainable to a 2015 CS superfan. Apex and Zywoo were playing with 3 Danish players. ENCE was... what the f*** was ENCE? I don't really know, but they were good. Despite the oddities and overall growing rate of the international lineups, there were still some national teams, and quite a few of them. Danes were still top dogs in CS, Brazilians always stuck together, and NA was doing its absolute best to stay alive in the great Valorant war of 2020 that wiped out a lot of good men. Godspeed, you brave soldiers. However, back to the topic of international rosters, FaZe was probably the defining one over the years. Their lineups over 2017 and 2018 were super teams that won a ton of events and had some really low lows, but the roster entering this Cologne was truly a Mr. Different Beast. They were entering as world number 1 and I would argue were better than any iteration prior. Rain was still kicking and one of the most reliable players of all time, the Honda Civic of Counter-Strike players. Robs had been poached from FaZe Academy, I mean Mouse Sports, and instantly moved the team onto a different echelon that they had never reached before. Brokey and Twist had become absolute superstars, and overall everyone was firing on all cylinders, which was 4 in the case of Rain. But beyond anyone else, I think this probably mattered most to Kerrigan. Kerrigan was already one of the greatest in-game leaders of all time. If he wasn't number 1 already, he probably wasn't much further down the list. He had won almost everything with more players than anyone else for longer than anyone else. But the one event that had always eluded him was one the world had universally decided and chosen as being one of the most important. But this time was different. He was more experienced than ever, his team was stronger than ever, and the field of opponents, while strong, were all looking up. Every other team in the world except Navi. There is probably a lot you can talk about in regards to Cologne 2022. From the one-off miracle run by the movie star writers that was probably the single biggest boost to Sun Pius's career in his life that he is still riding the high of to this day, to the disappointing finish of an ENCE that was on fire prior to this event, to an Astralis that was now playing with f***ing Farlig and the corpse of Exipnix. But ultimately it all pales in comparison to the inevitable meeting of Navi and FaZe. It was a 2-horse race leading up to Cologne 2022 and both Umamasumes were running through the metaphorical twinkle cup of Counter-Strike. Who wrote this? The finals of this event are considered by some people as the greatest game in Counter-Strike history. In short, it had everything you could want out of a series. Crazy ass clutches, close score lines, the whole 9 yards. There's a 33-minute video all about it if you want to watch that, or just watch the VOD, you do you boo. But if you don't want to do all that, there's one moment that stands out beyond everything else. The play at 14-14 on Nuke.
He did look. Oh! And he slaps him down! Back of the skull! Twist looking! Breaks Navi's backs! In the dying stages of regulation as they're gone 15. Twist, he just stands up and he tells Navi to sit down.
This play by Twist was so impactful that you can argue it probably won them the entire match and the event. It won Play of the Year at the Esports Awards, which was a show with a huge budget that literally just used a fucking watermarked version of the clip ripped straight from YouTube, those lazy fucks. But FaZe Clan took this trophy home in style, and finally after 8 years and 7 attempts, Kerrigan won his Cologne. 8 years and 7 attempts is starting to sound like my depression.
Long, back to pistols, back to pace, into B, and in your face, Modesty! 3 digs in 3 shots, and he wants every single one!
The CS Pro scene moves fast, man. Like, reactionary changes and stuff for top teams were always kind of a thing, and teams like the old Virtus Pro were exceptions to that rule, but in 2023, it felt like it had become hypercharged, and you were seeing teams milled through players like a Dead Branch Corruption deck and Slay the Spire. Is that too obscure of a reference for a Counter-Strike video? Maybe. Your Boomage card was no longer a win condition? Okay, no worries. Exhaust that card, and surprise! Now you have IM and Elixir B on your team somehow. Cool. Team Liquid did the same thing. Nitro retired? No worries. Exhaust his card and get, Patsy, and Rainmaker. Okay, let's just forget about that one. The biggest frontrunners for Cologne 2023 were Heroic and Vitality. Heroic had just won the Blast Spring Finals a month prior, and Vitality had gotten second at the same event and were reigning major champions. The one with the ugly-ass trophy, you know the one. This was also going to be the final Cologne event of CSGO, which was pretty important. You gotta finish out strong. With these frontrunners in mind, it was, of course, neither of these teams who made it to the final. G2, a team which had experienced a lot of highs and a lot of lows since adding the prodigal Monacy and the GigaChad Hooksy to their roster. This was one of their highs, because it was one of those events where Monacy just kind of pulled shit like this out. Like, yeah, okay man, that's cool, I love this game. I definitely wouldn't be pissed and throw my computer out a window. Their opponent in the finals was ENCE, another top 5 team in the world that had somehow managed to scrape together. I don't really know how they get to keep doing this. Some other interesting rosters attending this event included Astralis, who had successfully recreated the ship of Theseus, maintaining the same Astralis name but with none of the prestige or skill. That same FaZe roster that popped off last year and won the whole thing were also back, but weren't able to make that same run and lost to G2 and Na'Vi in the groups, which was kind of a rough ending for that roster as a whole. G2 had trounced ENCE in the finals though, thanks to a superstar performance from Nico and Monacy, but let's not forget to thank JKS for his contributions by kicking him off the team despite winning them 2 IEMs that year. Bye bye buddy, have fun on Team Liquid. He won't have fun, he will not have fun on this team. 2024 was different, not just because it was the first Cologne in CS2, but also because there isn't a ton of change from the rosters back here to what you see today. If you take a look at the attendee list, you'll see a lot of names and even entire teams that are very similar to today, maybe with just a player here or there. Headlining the event, and certainly the #1 scariest potential team, was one Team Spirit, who had Donk, the player who previously that year set the highest event rating at Katowice, and it was undeniably the best player in the world at the moment, and beating them was going to be an insurmountable challenge for any team. Oh, never mind. Team Spirit bombed out and Donk kind of got shit stomped, as did the rest of his team. One of the matches Spirit lost against was to a team called Mongols. If you follow CS at all, you probably know the name by now. They're a full team of Mongolian players and part of a region which has been historically pretty weak internationally, outside of a few glimmers of hope like the one Korean team in 2006. They had won an A tier and an S tier event so far in 2024 and were now taking down one of the top teams in the world. These guys were legit. They shouldn't even be considered underdogs anymore. Who knows though, at this point their story is still being written and they didn't even make top 6. That's just how competitive the Counter-Strike scene has gotten. There's truly a ton of parity and you can call any number of these teams scary or frontrunners, any given Sunday and all that. There were some usual suspects making it deep though. FaZe were still kicking it with a pretty similar roster. G2 had Nico and Monacy and therefore were always going to be at least a little decent. MOUZ were still a top team in the world behind their TikTok broccoli haircut at IGL Sui, and then SAW? Who the hell are SAW? SAW, the team, not the Heroic coach, were a full Portuguese team that were the definition of gatekeeper. They just kept to their own lane and never punched above and never punched below. They were a solid B-tier team, evidenced by the fact that they have won multiple B-tier events but have done nothing else. Mutiris was on this team and I really liked that guy. His old team in 2012, Kick, was one of the few teams who occasionally gave the Dynasty Nip a scare, and the fact that he was still finding new heights with a national team 10 plus years later into his professional career was really neat. They bowed out at 3rd and 4th, which was a hell of an overperformance for a team rated at 29th in the world at the time. They followed it up by winning an A-tier ESL Challenger Katowice a couple months later and then changing their roster before proceeding to wither into nothingness. Such is life for a CS team. Na'Vi and Vitality, some of the true and realistic frontrunners for this event as world #1 and #4, were the ones in the finals. Vitality, fresh off of adding Flames a couple months prior, dominated most of their matches. A couple of close calls against FaZe, but that was about it. MOUZ world #3, no problem. They made SAW look like the underdogs that they were. Na'Vi similarly had a clean run to the finals, with their only map dropped being to SAW, which is insane. Two teams this close in caliber was undoubtedly going to be a close finals, despite Vitality leading 6-0 in the matchup historically, and damn did it deliver. Vitality came out on top 3-1, but I don't think seeing the map count really illustrates how close this match really was. If there were a couple of key rounds going the other way, this could have easily been a Na'Vi 3-0, but unfortunately after falling 20-22 on Mirage, they couldn't rally back on Inferno despite almost pulling off the comeback. My researcher watched this match with his mom and she called it cool, so I think that should illustrate that this game is worth going back and taking a look at. Are you still watching? Hey, lock in. We still have a lot to cover here. So finally, here we are in the current year of 2025. It's been hell of a journey to get here, but after listening to me yap for a century, we're finally caught up to date, which is an extremely rare occurrence for a video of mine. Up until now, we've seen multiple iterations of Counter-Strike. Legendary players have hoisted the trophy and retired by now. Players who were 12 years old watching NIP lift the Cologne title 11 years ago have now stepped into the Lanxess and claimed it for themselves. Game after game, highlight after highlight, champion after champion, Cologne has tested the sands of time, and each winner has been just as memorable and significant as they were since we first stepped on that stage in 2014. But before I begin my coverage of the event, I need to make sure that we're doing this the right way. I need to experience this for myself. I need to provide you guys with the first hand so you can understand exactly what attending one of these legendary events is like. So I did everything in my power to make sure I can make it to Cologne. I analyzed flight paths and weather patterns, sun trajectory and moon phases. Ah yes, a waxing gibbous. I understand it now. And now I'm here. Perseverance over everything. You can do anything you set your mind to as long as you think really, really hard enough about it. You can even teleport from Los Angeles to Cologne, Germany. Anyway, unrelated, but huge thank you to Intel and Acer for flying me out here. I have no idea how you managed to get a flying, floating buttercat through TSA and immigration, but you've really outdone yourselves this time. Good job. But since I'm here in person, I might as well stop using the buttercat, so you better prepare yourselves. Are you ready? Oh, come on. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I literally just look like another white guy with brown hair and a mustache. Stop it. It's not that big of a deal, okay? I had the choice to enable the noise reduction for the trains and shit, but I felt like it would have been more authentic if I had just left it on, because it's funnier that way, actually. I actually wish that I teleported here, though, because it was a grueling 14-hour flight, and I had the window seat, so I was trapped the entire time. I had so much time to waste that I was playing chess against a stupid robot installed into my chair, and they were opening with knights every single game, and despite knowing this, it was kicking my ass because it didn't have a difficulty setting, so it was just at max the entire time. Fucking tin cans, man. I hate these robots. Anyway, I gave up and landed, and it was immediately greeted with an ad for IEM Cologne featuring a guy who was literally just eliminated the day before. Sorry, FaZe. But it was still really cool to see how the city respects and appreciates Counter-Strike on more than just a, it's a game that, like, happens here level. Seeing ads for a video game tournament, not just a video game, is super fucking cool. I don't see any of those in Los Angeles. I just see ads for Call of Duty and Battlefield. And the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I got here a day early, so I decided to do a little bit of exploring and see the actual Cologne Cathedral, but God deemed me unworthy and smited me on the spot, so I had to take refuge under a bridge with like 30 other sinners, I mean people. After about 30 minutes of cowering in fear, I went back to the hotel and was honored with witnessing how much beer 4 average Germans could drink.
God damn. Germans be drinking.
Vlogging aside though, what did the event look like this year as the train goes by me for the 7th time in a row? Vitality at this point are no longer world number 2 behind Spirit. After winning Cologne last year, they have really stepped their game up and have dumpstered everyone in their way, claiming the world number 1. Since February 2025, they have won 37 best of 3s in a row, 7 events in a row, including the Austin Major and a Grand Slam. They walked through groups without dropping a single map and beating Mongols convincingly after an Austin Finals rematch with ZywOo doing ZywOo things, meaning Vitality are going straight to the semis and Mongols will be in the quarters. It seems like Vitality are aimed to win their 2nd Cologne in a row, considering that not a single team has been able to beat them in months, but who knows? Maybe Falcons has something to say about that. No, I'm just kidding. They have absolutely no chance, even with another Russian superstar, Kyosuke, whose name I will not even bother to try and pronounce. When it comes to Falcons, there are only 2 things that you need to know that may seem contradictory. One is that you're allowed to like all the players on the team, and 2, you can still want them to lose no matter what. That's the beauty of free will, baby. Hating on Falcons is free, and I will do it. In this case, you don't have to worry about this internal dilemma, because they got booted by Furia with Yakindar in the group stage, despite the rookie putting up absolutely criminal numbers. Maus and Cologne always seem like the perennial bridesmaid, never the bride. Very capable of winning, and it would be dumb to count them out, but do I trust them to beat Vitality? No, not really. If you know, you know. Those who know. They qualified for the playoffs after beating Team Midquid 2-0 and then another 2-0 against a much more serious Na'Vi, which secured them a spot in the playoffs where they lost the seeding match against Spirit 2-1, who moved on straight to the semis. This Spirit match was a lot closer than it seems based on the scoreboard. Like, how do you go into overtime on 2 different maps and still have ratings this bad? Spirit are also fresh off a roster change, adding Zwei. I have never heard of this kid in my life before he got picked up, so that means he will probably crack the HLTV top 10 list this year. He was formerly on Team Namiga and Juggernaut Team Vaseline Worms, if you were wondering where he came from. Here's a fun fact about Spirit, though. Did you know that they have only won 7 maps where Donk has went negative? Yup, Donk has only gone negative 46 times in his entire career, and Spirit has only won 7 of those games. That amounts to a 15% win rate when Donk isn't carrying them like the backpack that he was bringing to school last year. You should guess how many times they've won when he's gone negative in a whole series, though.
Ooh, I know this one, I know, ooh, pick me.
It's never, the answer is never. Granted, the sample size is relatively small since his career only just started, and you should consider that teams are going to play bad when their star is underperforming, but that doesn't change the fact that Spirit look like a bag of chips when Donk isn't dropping 30. What does that even mean, bag of chips? Why did I write that? FaZe looked really good in the lower bracket where they resided after a loss to Na'Vi. They completely trashed Liquid, who won't even get the honor of being called mid this time because they were genuinely bad, and Naf, being the kind soul that he is, even told his opponents how many kills he was going to get on Mirage. But unfortunately for FaZe, as they made it all the way through, they were met with Na'Vi again in the lower bracket finals, and so they got their ass kicked and eliminated from the tournament. But that should be it for groups, unless you want me to talk about Nip and Heroic. I mean, these guys were previously winners, and look how much has changed. Who the fuck is Wrinkle and Iljerks? Who is Grix? Sorry, my lack of modern CS knowledge is showing at this point. I need to cover more recent events more often. So I got up bright and early, jet-lagged as hell, said hello to the vacuum cleaner that had a face on it, f***ing tin cans, man, and wobbled my ass to the Lanxess Arena. I was here with Fi of famous YouTube channel Fi CS2 and watched him get hounded by fans asking him to sign stuff. I also held his camera for a little bit, so if you end up watching his video whenever the hell that comes out, and he's like over there talking to fans, that was me. I was holding that camera. Also, shout out to the 2 people who called me his cameraman, especially the guy who made me hold his camera while he interviewed Fi. As if my self-confidence wasn't already low enough, I will remember your faces in my therapy session. I'm literally just I'm keeping this into the video. I don't care how long it is. I'm keeping this in the video. Future me, edit that in. The dude just screaming. You know what? I don't understand a thing he's saying, but I bet he's spitting. Actually, I shouldn't say that in case he's actually saying something bad that I don't understand. Yeah, it's a good call. I came here extremely early and it was absolutely packed. I'm starting to think that this game is like really popular or something. I thought all the little people that were inside my little pixel box machine that sits on my desk and emits blue light into my eyeballs were all just a part of my imagination, but I guess I was wrong. Anyway, I was also given access to the Intel Lounge sponsored by Intel, so thank you to Intel for letting me into the Intel Lounge sponsored by Intel. This spot gave me a really good view of the entire arena that was about to get flooded as the gates to the cathedral opened up. Also, one thing I want to mention here is if you actually look at the stage and we go into analysis mode, it actually resembles a cross, which is one reason it's called the cathedral. Aside from the 800-year-old colossus that sits in the center of the city, of course. This was such bad timing. I gotta use the bathroom so bad. And how many trains do you guys have? This is so cool, and I'm mad about it because I'm recording. But it's so cool that you guys just have trains that are constantly going, and they go all over the place, and they could take you literally everywhere. But in the United States, I gotta take a fucking 2-day train to get from San Francisco to Chicago. You. Back to the event though, I was rooting for the Mongols because this team is just so fascinating and fun to watch. They truly are the AMSA Red Yoshi of Counter-Strike. Underdogs that can just always go the entire way. Before the games began for the day, we got this opening which was absolutely magical to watch in person. We got to watch all the players walk out, which actually looks way less intense from up here since they're so small, but that's not the producer's fault. That's just how the walkouts work. I will say though, I'm not sure why Vitality got to lift the trophy before winning it. I understand that the storyline here is that they look like gods right now, so they're honored with bringing it out, but there must be some like seriously bad voodoo that comes with touching the trophy before winning it. It's just truly unfortunate that the one team I was rooting for choked map 1 after a convincing 10-4 lead and then absolutely got annihilated on map 2. On map 2, Mongols only started to get back into the swing of things conveniently once the scoreline hit 12-1, even a knife kill coming through which the crowd loved, but they must have forgot that they were already on match point and this was just too tall of an order for them. Me and literally everyone in the arena were extremely disappointed except for the insanely loud Navi fans. Though I was sad, this is just another example of what makes Cologne so amazing. Something about the arena and the atmosphere just brings out the most passionate of CS fans. And we haven't even seen Vitality play in front of the Golden Hornets yet. These guys all got their own sections just so they can coordinate chants and overall be loud and obnoxious, which isn't a jab at them. That is entirely the point of grouping them all up like this. I just can't believe I'm actually here right now for this. It's very surreal. Like, they just be letting anyone in. Oh, hey, look, it's OniPixel in his own booth. Wait, what the f***? Did he just see me? Is he looking at me right now? So Navi move on to face Spirit in the semis, and with a short break in between games, I used this opportunity to watch a guy ride a mechanical bull, which exists here for some reason, and I got a sandwich, which was literally just a piece of schnitzel between bread with no sauce or condiments or anything. It was good, but it was lacking the diabetes-threatening quality I look for in my food. But anyway, the Maus Furia match was one I was really looking forward to. Even though Mousesports wasn't a full German roster anymore and hadn't been for a while, the virtue alone of them being a German org was enough for the crowd to be absolutely hooting and hollering for them. Remember how I said that they were making these cracked CIS players in a lab? Maladoy is one of those examples. He was on Amcal for a solid 3 months earlier this year before Furia was like, holy shit, and plucked this kid and bought him a plane ticket to Brazil where he looked absolutely phenomenal. This entire game was back and forth basically the whole time. Train was frustratingly close thanks to Maladoy, but one team had more stinkers than the other, and Mirage was clinched thanks to a vintage performance out of Yakindar, but when the lights got bright, the only guys that seemed to show up on Furia was the veteran Fallen and the rookie Maladoy. Maus ended up taking the series with a Spinks and Torzi masterclass, but after the fact, everyone was just talking about how this Kazakhstani dude was the best player in the server despite losing the game. Day 2 was about to begin and the weather was not happy about the Mongols' elimination, and I wasn't either, but I still made my trek through the storm despite all my internalized struggles. Fortunately, life remains a good therapist on its own, and the moment that I saw the arena, I remembered what we do it for. I almost forgot that this was the whole point, or whatever corny shit they say on TikTok. The opening was once again very sick, and the walkout equally funny to me because of the ant-sized players. Hey look, it's Donk! Goat in the making, and he knows it. Navi though are one of those teams that, even when they make it this far, I kind of feel weird about believing in them regardless of Alexa B being known for making these crazy runs at big events. The end of Jail's time on this roster was pretty rough, and even though they picked up Mikaze from Navi Jr., who was playing really well according to both stats and the eye test, it felt like the good times were gone, and that Navi that won the major was in the past. Again, they were playing Spirit, who themselves had a new player in Zwei. Either way, it's a rookie v rookie situation. Turns out the lights could have been a lot brighter, because even with Zwei underperforming, they still have a Donk who shred Navi apart, as he usually does. Mikaze played extremely well in his debut tournament with the main Navi squad, and they really shined on Mirage, but it wasn't enough to stop the Big D, who dropped a monstrous 1.7 rating on the map. Navi prevail in the second, almost looking like they figured out how to shut down Donk. Until Ancient, where Donk woke back up and dropped yet another 1.7 alongside the rest of Spirit, who went positive besides Chopper. Zontex had a phenomenal T-side, and Shiro was playing confidently, even peeking through mollies. This is exactly what you want to see from these guys. Play with confidence even when you know that you got Donk on your team. But now it's time for Vitality Mouse, which means it's time for the Golden Hornets. Look how hyped they are already. So blissfully unaware of the fact that Vitality is about to lose their historic win streak right in front of their eyes. Before the game started, I wanted to be a real fan in the crowd, not in my cozy little booth. I wanted to be in the trenches with the everyday CS fan. So I took advantage of my media pass and made my way over to the Golden Hornets to experience what it's like to be one of the boys. Were they going to accept me, or were they going to see through my facade and beat me to a pulp for infiltrating their base of operations? I first stopped in front of them simply to study the superfans and their natural habitat, and it was quite fascinating. I couldn't understand any of the chants except for the one where they said Vitality. I feel like that one was pretty obvious. The arena was so cool at this angle, you could really see everything. As Vitality walked out, the Golden Hornets were as loud as they can possibly be, chanting, banging their drum, probably drinking a lot, deploying a giant flag with a meme on it. These guys were the definition of diehards. I managed to snag one of the casters of the event, Hugo, for his thoughts on the matter.
Hugo, thoughts on the vibe? F***ing loud!
When the match began, I snuck my way into the crowd to become one of the Golden Hornets for a little bit, just to see what it was like with them. I bet to everyone else this is quite annoying, especially if you're cheering for the other team, but I gotta admit, it felt cool as hell. You could really feel the energy from this spot in the arena, and by energy, I mean the smell of cigarettes and sweat, but also a physical energy. I felt the floor moving with every jump that they made, and their chants were so loud I can feel it creating a pressure in my chest, and I'm pretty sure it's not a heart attack either. I didn't record everything from this spot, and I actually did join them for a couple of chants, so you can probably see me in the like camera that they're showing, zooming over the crowd. I'll try to look for it. But for right now, I can't hear myself talk over the chants, so I'm just gonna move back over here. I left at a good time too, because the moment I got back to the lounge, Vitality started losing bad. But it was still probably gonna be cooked for Mouse. They had a close game versus Furia, and there's a lot of respect there, but now they have to play against Vitality. It was cooked. It was over. Mouse could probably take a map off of them. They were no slouch, but it wasn't even a rivalry between these two teams. Vitality had kicked their ass every single time before. Okay, apparently Vitality didn't want it nearly as much as the Golden Hornets wanted them to have it. Robs was literally the only player in this series, and even Zaiwu dropped an abysmal 0.59 rating over both maps. Rob's ace in the first map, Rob's 1v3 on round 18, Rob's pistol 4K on map 2. Guy was the only one hitting any clips.
Oh, brother. This guy stinks!
Although the Golden Hornets were loud, they were no match for the entire arena of people who all wanted to see the Vitality win streak die at the hands of the legacy German organization on home soil. After all this time, maybe this is the year that Maus finally do it again. Maybe home field advantage is a thing in Counter-Strike. Nobody thought that Maus could do it, and they pulled it off. Or maybe Vitality were cursed for carrying the trophy on the first day, like I mentioned. Or maybe it's because of their sponsorship they just acquired. Maybe it's something in the soil. After such a heartbreaking defeat, you would expect the Golden Hornets' wings to be a little tattered, but the Hive was still buzzing as Bald Apex did his losers interview. Love them or hate them, you can't beat passion like that. This is what we do it for. The finals are now set with Maus, who is fighting for the championship on home soil in honor of the organization due to not having a single German on the roster, and then Shanghai major winners Spirit. You don't really appreciate how incredible this stadium is until you see it when it's empty. The opener for the finals was just fantastic, showing all the previous winners we've seen over the years and surprising us with Forrest walking out with the trophy. I actually teared up watching him go by all these players who succeeded his prime, paying respects to a legend who won the first ever Cologne in CSGO. Actual chills. A few of these guys on the stage weren't even born by the time Forrest won his first big event in 2005. Donk and Zwei were born in 2007 and Jimfat in 2006. If that doesn't make you feel old, then you should. And if you're that young, then you don't actually exist. People born after 2005 are just an error in the coding, and you will be patched out next update. The finals are finally underway, and Map 1 Mirage was not exactly close. Everyone on Maus except Brolin had a below 0.9 rating, which you just absolutely hate to see, but it's a best of 5, so that means they're gonna have plenty of chances to get back in the game. Despite the loss for Maus, the building was electric, and in between maps I wanted to pick the brains of a couple locals who were attending the event.
I'm here with Daniel Lapiro, Danny Dimes.
My name is Niklas. Jonas, also from Germany.
I was about to ask where are you from, like dumbass.
Have you been to many Cologne events?
I've been 2015, 2016, last year and this year.
It's my first event here.
Really?
First event and I love it. The crowd is insane. The game from yesterday, Maus vs Vitality, was insanely good.
Ja, das ist mein erstes Mal, ja.
What do you think is like the most significant thing about Cologne as a place for Counter-Strike?
By now it is history, right? It has a legacy. It is the cathedral. Yeah. Right? It is the spot to be in Counter-Strike. It's just the build-up over the last 10 years.
What do you think makes it so special?
Yeah, I have to say the crowd. The crowd is insane. And Cologne, it's so much Counter-Strike.
It has to be the people. Counter-Strike in itself is already so community-driven. Valve basically does nothing, if we're completely being honest. The great things we love about the game come usually from the people that play. You feel that when you come here. It's just the place to be.
You go away from this arena and this area, you see Counter-Strike in Döner Kebab, in a restaurant, everywhere is Counter-Strike.
Ich glaube, dass die Leute hier extrem cool sind, dass generell die Stimmung hier in der Arena die beste Stimmung in jedem Counter-Strike-Event ist. Und das ist diese Einzigartigkeit, die gefällt mir hier sehr gut, ja.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time on this. Thank you. Map 2 began and MOUZ got off to a really hot start, but slowly let go of an 8-4 lead they accumulated, and the map was basically over once Donk wins this 1v2 to tie the game.
Down to this 1v1, and you're trapped in here with Donk, Jimmy. How do you want to play it? He's bearing down upon you!
So despite MOUZ playing well, Donk with his 1.7 rating pushed Spirit over the line for a map 2 and are now looking to clean sweep MOUZ on Nuke. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened because this map was not even close.
Trial by fire, 1v1 for the Cologne title, and he's gonna do it! From Spirit to Demons, from the underworld to the top of the world, Team Spirit get their Cologne title to complete their unholy trinity.
13-6 and Spirit wins IEM Cologne 2025 in a dominant final against the hometown heroes, minus anyone actually from the hometown. Donk claims his 9th MVP in under 2 years with a 1.56 rating in the finals and would actually go on to win his 10th MVP at Blast Bounty Season 2, and I would go on to post my 2nd video in a row glazing Donk because he ended up winning the event I planned on covering. I swear this wasn't intentional. The crowd, who was predominantly rooting for MOUZ, were good sports and showed their respect to Spirit as they win the most recent Cologne and the final one listed in this video. So after all these years, from players who won so long ago their prestige is talked about as if it were legend, to next generation champions who dominate a game that's older than they are, what is it that makes Cologne so special? I think it's like Nicholas said, Cologne is so much Counter-Strike. This city takes pride in Counter-Strike, but at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is always going to be the people in the community. And I know that's a really cliche answer to come to, but thousands of people from all over the world travel to Cologne for one thing we all have in common: Counter-Strike. We could all learn a thing or two from the Frenchmen of the Golden Hornet. They are loud. Everyone who isn't a part of the group is actively rooting against them, but they are here nonetheless. They could have not shown up for the finals or taken their Vitality jerseys off in shame. They could have stopped attending the event after Vitality lost. They could have refused to cheer or chant. They could have even booed the team that beat Vitality. But at the end of the event, while everyone else was leaving, the only people I could see left in the arena were the Golden Hornets, a day after Vitality was already gone, still in their seats and doing the Macarena. They are present. They are enjoying the moment. They are proud fans of the game that brought them here together. The Cathedral is more than just a place to cheer for your favorite team. It's a celebration of competition and community, of friendships and rivalries, camaraderie and history. It's a culmination of all things Counter-Strike, and it all started here 25 years ago in this exact city of Cologne, Germany. But that's pretty much it for all the Colognes we've seen. Let me know if I missed anything crucial, although the video is long enough as is, or let me know if I got anything wrong or what kind of stuff you might want to see me cover in the future. I do actually read all of my comments, even though I take forever to upload. I promise I do read literally every single one. Literally every single one gets read. Once again, massive thank you to Intel for sponsoring this video and flying me out to Cologne. This was truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I enjoyed every minute of it. If anyone at Intel is watching this, please invite me again next time. I'll have a better camera ready this time, I swear. Also, huge thank you to Elwin Scott for editing this section with my stupid face in it. And also massive thank you to Kieran Etoh Price for helping me with the script and research. This video would literally have not been possible without you. You don't gotta subscribe if you don't want to, but thank you if you did. I really appreciate you if you watched this far regardless, and let me know what kind of stuff you might want to see me cover in the future. If you made it this far or are hearing this at all, I want to thank you specifically for watching and not any of those other guys who didn't watch till the end. Yuck, imagine not supporting your favorite creator. Ugh. But seriously, thank you for choosing my video instead of all the other videos on here. You should check out my other videos on this sort of similar stuff, or just watch them all. That'd be pretty cool. But either way, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.
You want to see something epic?
Yes.